Greetings and welcome to the League of Women Voters Meet the Candidates Forum, a program produced in collaboration with WTJX-TV for well over 35 years. I am Francine Lang, moderator for today's program. As I live and care for an elderly relative who may be immunocompromised due to advanced age, I have chosen to wear a mask for today's program. I ask your understanding and acceptance of my decision as I strive to protect her. It is the League's hope that through these programs, you, the voting public, will have a better understanding of each candidate running for elected office in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We invite you to look at all our programs for the 2022 election year right here on WTJX-TV, with candidates seeking office as a senator in the 35th legislature or as governor or lieutenant governor. Although all candidates for these positions were invited, not all responded or accepted the invitation. We're delighted to have here today, however, two candidates running for the position of senator in the St. Croix district. The candidates have been informed in advance of the guidelines for the program. No candidate had access to the questions in advance. The first responder to each question will be rotated among the participants. Answers are generally 60 or 90 seconds. Changes in timing of a question will be announced in advance. Any comment directed specifically at another participant will be followed by a rebuttal of 60 seconds. All are expected to be respectful of everyone. So let's begin. I will ask each candidate to identify who they are and to state their political affiliation and ballot number. We will learn more about each as our discussion ensues. Let's start with Sam Carrion. Sam, could you please state your name, your ballot number, and your affiliation, please?
Samuel Sam Carrion, independent candidate, number 12.
And now Maurice James. Please state your name, your ballot number, and your affiliation, please.
Good day. I am Maurice James. I'm a Democrat, and I'm number 16. Suite 16.
Now for our first question. Let's begin by talking about your readiness to be a senator. Here is a two-part question for which you will each have 90 seconds to answer. As a candidate for a seat in the VI legislature, what are your competencies as well as education or training that will make you a good choice to address our issues as senator? And what are your recent accomplishments that show your skills and readiness to assume the responsibilities of the office? So please answer both parts of the questions in 90 seconds. What are your competencies and your accomplishments related to the responsibilities of the position? 90 seconds. We will start with Sam.
Thank you. Having a general background, I'm a business, my major is in business administration. I also have a background in theology. I've worked in the nonprofit sector for many years, directed the Red Cross here, a chapter on St. Croix, territorially. I'm also a business owner. I also come from a public sector. So I bring a vast knowledge of experience from both the nonprofit sector, the private sector, and the public sector that allows me to have an understanding of the challenges within our community and the things that we need to be able to improve the quality of life for everyone in our community. Plus, as a sitting senator, I've had the experience to understand the process within the legislature. I've been able to pass favorably many bills that are now enacted as laws. Also, I've worked for the Superior Court of the Virgin Islands, the judicial branch. I worked for the executive branch as a senior policy advisor for former administration, and now in the legislative branch. So that gives me an overall experience of all three branches in government.
Thank you. Maurice, again, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you, Francine. I am an attorney and a mediator. I graduated from the University of Maryland School of Law, came back home, and worked for the law office of Winston Hodge, which later became Hodge and Sheen. I also worked at different departments in government. I worked at DPNR. I also worked at the legislature. I can say, even though I am not a senator and have never been elected to the office of Senate, I drafted legislation that had meaningful impact. For example, when I was in the Virgin Islands National Guard, I collaborated with then, well, he's still Senator Kurt Viale to pass Forward March and About Face, which are two programs that impact young people who need help, assistance in life with life skills. I recently collaborated with Senator Novell Francis and drafted legislation that deals with the integration of EMS and fire. I also drafted legislation for the RT Park, which again, I collaborated with Senator Novell Francis and Kurt Viale. I've worked in the private, public, I've worked for both civilian and military. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now let's talk about your vision for the Virgin Islands. 2027 will mark the 100th anniversary of American citizenship for Virgin Islanders and 110 years since the purchase from Denmark. The question is, what is your vision with respect to self-governance for the U.S. Virgin Islands, and what role do you intend to play, if any? Please note that self-governance does not necessarily imply independence. You'll have 60 seconds, and we'll start with Maurice.
Thank you. In 1989, I actually served as the assistant political status coordinator for the Virgin Islands when we were deciding on what our political status would be. Unfortunately, that process was interrupted by Hurricane Hugo, but we were deciding whether or not, as you state, Francine, whether we would stay. It ranged from independence to status quo. At the time, most people wanted status quo, but with enhanced ability to govern ourselves. For example, have our own constitution. I promote right now as a candidate that we explore where we can get greater authority and jurisdiction in certain areas, but not necessarily separate from the United States, because our relationship with the United States, especially after the hurricanes, has shown us how important and significant that is.
Thank you. Sam, again, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you, Francis. I think it's important for us as a community to continue having these conversations and these dialogues. Town hall meetings, community input is crucial. Self-determination is something that we, the people, have to decide what path we want to take. So I think part of what we have to continue to do, and what I advocate for, is to continue to provide information, educate our community, be able to have these forums where we could have these conversations and listen to input, and also present options that are available for us as Virgin Islanders. And I really have to start knowing who we are as a people. You know, we don't know where we want to go if we don't know who we are. So these conversations, we have to start having these dialogues within our community. And I think UVI has been a crucial key component to having these forums, to having these discussions, and to help us as a community to identify what path we want to take.
Thank you. To what extent should moral and ethical issues in the private life of political candidates be taken into account by voters in making their choices, and why? You'll have 60 seconds, and we will start with Sam.
I think it has an important role to play. Your ethics, your moral compass really speaks about who you are as a person. Of course, individually, we all have our professional lives and our personal lives, and sometimes you're in the public sector, those things cannot be separated. But the reality is, when we speak about having a morals compass and having ethics guidelines, it really speaks about who you are as a person and the level of integrity and how you are going to present yourself in a professional matter now at a higher level as a public leader, public servant within our community. So I think they go hand in hand. As individuals, it's important that we recognize that leadership requires sacrifice, and leadership requires a level of example and a standard that is important for others to follow and emulate, especially our young people within our community.
And Maurice, again, you'll have 60 seconds.
It's your moral and your ethical values are very important to you as a senator and as any public figure in our community. While I was in the Virgin Islands National Guard, I served as the ethics counselor. And it was basically to tell our employees that the public has trust in you. They trust you with their resources. The same applies in whether it's federal government, where I worked before, or local government, Virgin Islands government. You have to make sure that the trust that the public has in you will always be at the forefront. And it can only be at the forefront of your mind if you have strong ethical and moral values. You understand that you need to be accountable to the people. You have to be transparent with their resources, because you're using their resources, the public's resources, to provide public services to them. So at the end of the day, you're accountable to them, and you should be transparent, and your values should dictate your decisions.
In a recent poll of the electorate in 2022, voters identified 4 areas of major concern as being education, crime, health, and WAPA. Let's look at each one separately and address what your responses would be for these matters if elected to the 35th legislature. With respect to education, cited by voters as one of 4 major concerns, what do you see as the primary challenges facing education today, and what would be your strategies for addressing them as a senator in the 35th legislature? You'll have 90 seconds, and we'll start with Maurice.
Thank you. One of my focus areas is education. As a former teacher in the public school system, I understood what education means. It provides our children with an opportunity. As the founder of the Paralegal Institute, I know, and I saw that education changed the lives of people, workforce training. Right now, our students are behind. They are resilient, but they're behind because we've gone through hurricanes in 2017 that put them behind. After that, we went through the pandemic. That's 5 years. More perhaps, because prior to the hurricanes, we were already behind in terms of reading. There were reading gaps. So what we have to do now as a community is we need to emphasize more than ever programs to reduce the deficiencies that we're seeing in our children. Whether now, if you were 5 years old in 2017, you're now 10 in 5th grade. So we need to address those issues, and one of the things that I propose is that we do high dosage tutoring programs where we put our money where our mouth is and make sure that our community is literate, because education, more than anything else, changes a community. It's the one driver that brings change to a community. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sam?
Again,
you'll have 90 seconds, sorry.
Thank you. As a father of 4, education to me is a priority. I have 4 children that are part of the public school. 2 have recently graduated and are moving on to college. We have major issues within our Department of Education. And the problems that we have are not really a funding issue because the money is there. It's more of a management issue. We really need to work on improving our children. And part of that has to do with ensuring that our teachers are well paid. We know across the territory there is a gap in finding teachers. And the ones that we have are working with little to no resources provided by the department. So that creates a moral issue among the teachers who are passionate and really dedicated, because to be a teacher, it has to be a devotion. It's not really you're seeking a salary, but we understand that with a high cost of living, a living salary is important. So part of that has to do with ensuring that our teachers and supporting staff are well paid, well trained, and then ensuring that we have programs for our children to help them to fill the gap. Like how my colleague here said, because of the hurricanes and pandemic, our children are way behind. So we need to really improve and create programs that would bring them up to par and prepare them for the workforce and real life.
Thank you. With respect to health, cited by voters as one of the top 4 major concerns, many leave the territory in search of health care, especially on St. Croix. What do you see as the primary challenges regarding health care, and what would be your strategies for addressing them as a senator in the 35th legislature? Again, you'll have 90 seconds, and we'll start with Sam.
Thank you. I was able to work along with my colleague, Senator Francis, in the behavioral health bill. And we have enormous challenges within our healthcare system. Part of it, we need to really strengthen the infrastructure of our healthcare system and really attract doctors who are specialized in different areas to avoid having our people having to leave the territory. Maybe some of us could afford to leave and seek medical attention elsewhere, but you have a number of individuals within our territory that unfortunately they can't jump on a plane and go to one of the main hospitals in the States. So to ensure that we provide quality health care to our community is of paramount of importance. We have a failing healthcare infrastructure. We need to make sure that it's properly funded, and part of our job as a senator is ensuring that different departments and agencies have the funding that they need in order to carry out their mission, their responsibility, their goals. And part of that has to do with healthcare. We need to really empower and ensure that they have the proper funding to strengthen the infrastructure necessary so that our people can receive a quality healthcare service that they deserve. We don't deserve any less than any other state or jurisdiction in the nation, and I will continue to advocate and ensure that for our people here in the territory.
Thank you. And Maurice, again, you'll have 90 seconds.
Thank you. We have to address not only hospitals, but the overall health of our people. Most of the focus lately is, of course, on the reopening of the, well, not the reopening, but the opening of the modular hospital, which will happen soon. But we need to focus also on not having our people see hospitals as their primary care. It has been the safety net really for primary care issues. It should only be for emergency. And so what we need to do is come up with collaborative approaches with the various sectors in our community so that we can provide primary care to our population. We also need to educate our population more on personal health issues like diabetes, high blood pressure, heart issues that affect us as a people in the territory. One of the other things that I think that we need to do, and I was happy working with Governor Bryan on the integration of EMT and fire, because at some point when we build up the capacity, we can actually have mobile health vehicles going through the community and providing the primary care that they need. We can have school health centers. Those are nonprofit, faith-based organizations that actually address health issues at the preventative level, so that once we address it, we have a healthier population, and we can actually make ourselves then able to work better.
Thank you. With respect to crime, cited by voters as one of the top 4 major concerns, well, this is a 2-part question, so you'll answer the first part and then we'll take the second part. But the first part is, what do you see as the challenges, and what would be your strategies for addressing them as a senator in the 35th legislature? And again, you'll have 90 seconds each, and we'll start with Maurice.
And this is crime, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Crime, just like all the other issues that we're having in the Virgin Islands in terms of social issues, the cause is poverty. 30% of our children are living in poverty. And when you have children living in poverty, that means their parents cannot afford to provide them the environment that they need, the activities that we need. We have to find ways to have collaboration again between communities, schools, churches to provide the activities that children need so that they do not and are not led to a life of crime. My focus more as a senator will be on prevention as opposed to punitive measures. I don't think that we should wait at the back end. We should address issues at the front end. And so for me, I would like to see different programs, especially targeted towards boys, because we practically have an epidemic in the VI now with the number of deaths we're experiencing every year. That's a health issue as much as it is a public safety issue. And so my focus will be on finding ways to get boys and girls involved in activities that will prevent them and deter them from going towards a life of crime. So my mantra will be prevention is worth upon a cure.
Sam, again, we're dealing with crime. What do you see as the major challenges and what would be your strategies? You have 90 seconds.
Well, when we deal with crime, we really need to look at it from a holistic perspective if we really want to bring a solution. It needs to be a societal reformation. So we need to grab it from different levels. Of course, it starts within the house, within the family, that family concept, and the nucleus is so important. But prevention is also the key. So we need to ensure that we have programs for our young people, for our children, that they have alternate activities that would keep their mind involved. So you need to tackle it from an emotional perspective, intellectual perspective, so to ensure that the whole person is complete. And so having those type of programs that deals in the area of the arts, that deals in the area of maybe tutoring after program, that deals with the areas of sports and athletics, to ensure that then our children have options. So prevention really is the key. But apart from prevention, we need to ensure then that the Virgin Islands Police Department is properly funded, that they have the tools and equipment necessary to carry out their job. Sometimes we expect a lot, but we don't give a lot. So as a senator, you need to ensure that when balancing the budget, they have the resources necessary to carry out their responsibility of enforcing the law. But also, the third part to it has to be with rehabilitation. Once someone has violated, they deserve second chances. So we need to have programs in place in our Bureau of Correction to really train our people, to give them skills necessary so that when they can integrate back in our community.
Thank you. So the second part of this question, and we'll go in the same order, is sexual assault against our children is a concern in our community. Recent disclosure of assaults against 12 schoolboys by a teacher is shocking, and the community was rightfully outraged. But girls are raped and assaulted too. How can you, as a senator, protect our boys and girls from sexual assaults by adults? You'll have 60 seconds, and again, we'll start with Maurice.
How can we protect our boys and girls? Again, it starts, and I'm going to keep hitting this. We need to address the poverty in our community. We need to address that a lot of children are in households where their parents sometimes are absent because they're working 1 or 2 jobs and they don't have anyone to care for them. I happen to have been raised at a time when grandparents were very involved. And so my mother, who was a single mother, had my grandmother, her mother, who helped. And so I believe that we need to uplift our people out of poverty. But when it comes to the predators, I have I don't even know what the word is to say, just I would say that when it comes to people who are convicted, because allegations are one thing, but when they're convicted, we have to have stricter laws, and we have to look closely at the sentencing that our judges are actually handing out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Sam, can you
Yeah.
address that one again? You'll have 60 seconds.
Thank you. And this is a key issue that we've been talking a lot within our community, unfortunately, because of the number of incidents we've been hearing lately. I really believe it has to start with educating. Part of the problem, I think, sometimes is that we are afraid to have the serious conversations. And I think it starts within the family, you know, mothers and fathers having those conversations with their children. You know, what's a good touch, what's not a good touch, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and building that trust so that you can open up and say something, but also ensuring that within our Department of Education and all those agencies and departments that work with children have policies in place that those that are working, there's background checks, that there are oversights that people can really then supervise and ensure that the environment that our kids are in, it's a safe environment. So I think those are important things to help prevent it.
Thank you. With respect to WAPA as one of the 4 concerns cited by voters, what do you see as the major challenges for WAPA? And what would be your strategies for addressing them as senator in the 35th legislature? You'll have 90 seconds, and we'll start with Sam.
I think with WAPA, part of our issue really has been that we have a very outdated system that has been operating for years, and the maintenance of it hasn't really been what it should have. But we are looking now, moving into a direction where we're getting smaller new generating systems that will help us conserve and not have so much waste, which then taxpayers or clients, I should say, the customers should be able to see some relief in the cost of energy. As a sitting senator in the 34th legislature, I work closely because I'm a member of the Energy and Infrastructure Subcommittee. So I work closely with my colleagues, and we were successful in passing legislation that would really change the board of WAPA. WAPA had, over the years, had a management issue, and it's no secret, we've seen in the headlines. So there was a lot of things that were happening, lack of accountability, lack of transparency, even allegations of corruptions. All of that has to change. I am hopeful that with the new leadership, policies and regulations that have been in place, the new system, generating system that is coming on board, that we should be able to see some relief, and the taxpayers will be able to see some relief within their pockets.
Thank you. And Maurice, again, you'll have 90 seconds.
I also believe that we have to give the new administration of WAPA, with any change in leadership, we have to give those who are in power at now the ability to assess and decide the way forward. I also agree that the new generating systems are going to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of delivering electricity to our people and reduce the bills that we have. I also want to say that sometimes we don't in this community commend people, but I want to do so with respect to the young man who's leading the energy the division, Kyle Fleming. Thank you. I think that he's doing a great job in educating the public about the efficient use of energy, of renewable energy. At some point, we have to remember that fossil fuels are finite, that at some point they're not going to be available, and that we should all be thinking about renewable energy resources and heading in that direction. So I am optimistic both with the new leadership and with the direction I've been seeing from the Energy Agency, that we will in fact be able to conquer this, because right now sunlight is free. No one taxes it. I don't think they can. And so we need to make better use of the sun, and we're in an area where the sun is there for us to use freely.
Thank you. For the first time in about 25 years, GERS was not identified as a major concern. What is your understanding of why this is so, and what lessons can we learn about how this came to be so? You'll have 60 seconds, and we'll start with Maurice.
Well, my understanding of GERS, and because I am not a GERS employee, I was in the federal government for 18 years, and I was just sporadically in government, but I understood how the retirees were scared In fact, because of the mismanagement, it seemed to me, of the assets that GERS had, the way that we were moving in a direction where more money was leaving than coming in, which made it difficult for the GERS board to manage whatever resources they had. Recently, as most of us know, we used the bond method to resolve the GERS, and as you say, it's no longer on the table. I think that history will show us whether or not that was the right path to go, but I think it probably was what needed to be done and was done to save GERS. And at the end of the day, we didn't want our retirees to become homeless.
Thank you. And Sam, again, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. Well, I'm proud to have been part of, along with my colleagues, to bring forth Act 8540, GERS Stabilization Act, which was crucial and needed. You know, sometimes we think about GERS and people in our community think, well, it only affects those that are part of the system. And the answer to that is no. We're a small community, and there's a ripple effect that will affect everyone within our community. Part of the problem, I think, has been that over the years, the government size has reduced, and we have then more individuals than depending from the annuity than those that are contributing to it. So we have a lot of vacancies within the government, and the system won't be able to sustain itself that way. The pyramid has been inverted. So we need to ensure that we fill the vacancies that we have in the government so contributions could continue to flow. We need to ensure that the board and GERS, the people that are there assigned, are well qualified and have the knowledge to ensure that management is appropriate.
Thank you. Let's talk about growing the economy. While tourism is the backbone of our economy, the majority of the electorate do not work in that industry. Many work in government, but that does little to bring in new dollars. So what's left is the private sector. What have you done or plan to do as a senator to grow or support the private sector and to encourage more locals to become successful in the private sector? You'll have 60 seconds each, and we'll start with Sam.
The private sector, especially small businesses, are the backbone of our economy. They're the engine driving force. As a small business owner myself, I can clearly understand some of the challenges that small business owners or the private sector face. And we need to ensure that we listen to that community, but also that we also provide venues and mechanisms to strengthen the private sector and small businesses. Technical support. We need to also create incubator programs that will support emerging small businesses. And we need to try to diversify our economy by providing options and other alternatives. I feel proud to say that I was the bill sponsor of Act 8528, the hotel occupancy tax relief, which also levels the playing field and ensures that there's direct funding from the taxes from the short rental businesses, short rental homes into our treasury.
Thank you. And Maurice?
One of the things that I was recently involved in and I felt really good to be a part of was the passage of the Catalyst Fund by the RT Park, because that in itself is going to assist small businesses. It's going to provide the tools needed for us to grow the economy. Another area that I've been involved recently as a real estate attorney and a transactional attorney is one of my clients recently was awarded EDA loan, which is going to help her, and she's a local Crucian. It's going to help her create a business where she will hire people. And I think we need to do more of that. We need to attract young people back to the territory. We need to remove barriers to businesses, you know, when it comes to government regulations. We probably even need to look at our taxes again. Maybe the gross receipts tax I know people don't like to touch it. They don't like to talk about it. But at the end of the day, it's the consumer really that suffers because the businesses just pass it on to them. So there's some things we need to really look at, and I look forward, if elected, to working on those measures.
Thank you. The pandemic has shown us that we need to diversify our economy and supplement our dependence on tourism. What other opportunities do you see besides tourism and alcohol for growing and diversifying our economy? And what are the challenges to making them a reality? You'll have 60 seconds, and we'll start with Maurice.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to give a really good example that I experienced recently. I was in London, and I needed to get my tests done in order to return home to St. Croix. And so my daughter and I had to go on, and by video conference, a nurse was helping us, and she administered the test. Well, she looked at us while we were going through the test. I know my time is short, but something just said to me, ask her where she is, who she is. And she said to me, I'm actually in South Africa. We somehow in a VI, and she said she's hired by a company in London. And we somehow in a VI forget that there's another economy, a knowledge-based economy. And we need to start looking for ways. I recently too, again, I'll give this example. I actually needed customer service from VIA. And when I called the young lady who answered the phone, I also asked her where she was located, and she said Guyana. So somebody helped me with customer service here in the VI.
Thank you.
We need to change. We need to look at knowledge-based economy and grow our workers in that direction. High skilled.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll continue with Sam. Again, you have 60 seconds. Did you need me to read the question?
No, it's fine. Okay. Diversifying economy is crucial. We can't just be dependent on one industry. And if we do that, we are setting ourselves for failure, because when that industry shuts down for any particular reason, then we're in trouble. We saw it through COVID. Our number one industry, tourism, was affected. So we really need to find ways and develop policies that would open the market, and we need to become more business friendly. We call ourselves Paradise. The Virgin Islands come and visit us, but we really need to then look at our laws and see how can we improve and provide incentives, do a better job in marketing. Agriculture, for example, is an industry that has great potential, and we are not really tapping into it. We need to provide all the technical support that our farmers need to really be successful in that area of industry. We have the land, and now UVI has even opened up to provide an associate degree in that field. So we need to ensure that we look at these other industries and tap into them to diversify our economy.
Thank you. Medical marijuana was intended as a possible boost to the economy, and an office has been created to develop policies and procedures for oversight of medicinal marijuana in the territory. It appears that little has come from it thus far. What do you see as the role of the legislature in addressing this matter? And again, you'll have 60 seconds. We will start with Sam.
Thank you for that question. I think part of the role of the legislature is to ensure that we have all the safety measures in place. If in fact this is the direction that the territory wants to move in and it's favorably approved, talking about the recreational part of the cannabis, I know we have adopted the medical component of it. We need to ensure that our regulations and policies are in place, and above everything, that our children are safe. So in everything that we do, we need to make sure that as legislators, we create a pathway in which things can flow, but we need to make sure that safety, security, there's also some concerns when it comes to mental health, so that these areas we have the infrastructure necessary to be able to manage these changes.
Thank you. And Maurice, again, you have 60 seconds.
Well, the role that the legislature has, as Sam knows, the only role that the legislature can do is, in fact, when it comes to policies and procedures, those are actually at the administrative level. And maybe the legislature can look at the composition of the board. Maybe they can look at the powers and authority that that the regulatory body has. Make sure that the people who are on those bodies are able to implement, because at the end of the day, you're talking about implementation, and that's really the executive branch. So the most that the legislature can do at this point is oversight and try to make sure that policies and procedures are fair, that there's due process. There's certain things that need to, and they can always, of course, ask for a review of whatever the policies and procedures are. But that's the extent to which the legislature can affect it. It's really up to the executive branch in terms of implementation of policies and procedures.
Okay, thank you. Let's turn our attention to the environment and climate change. For over 30 years, the League has asked the same question regarding the development of a land and water use plan for the territory. And without fail, over the past 30 years, gubernatorial and senatorial candidates alike have pledged that on their watch, a plan would be developed. None has. None. So we instead asked this question: what impact, if any, have you seen on the territory as a result of not having a plan? And what do you see as a concern moving forward without a plan? You'll have 60 seconds, and we'll start with Maurice.
Thank you. I was involved in real estate development, as I said, when I first started, when I first came home. And you're correct. From then, we talked about the comprehensive land use plan. What have I seen as a result? I can talk from the small property owner really violating zoning setbacks, having certain businesses in areas where they shouldn't be, to gasoline stations on every corner, to big buildings being put up in residential developments, and forgetting about the neighbors, the people who live. So yes, it has negatively impacted us all these years with the absence of one. And we, again, the area that we live on is 84 square miles. It's not getting any bigger. And so we definitely need to educate the people and get them to rally behind, you know. I really love the fact that I saw protesting recently, because that's a part of democracy. Well, I'll end at that. But
thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Sam, again, you'll have 60 seconds. Did you need me to go over the question?
No, that's fine. Thank you. Like in any state or a jurisdiction, I think it's important to have a land and water use plan. And not having one really creates total chaos, because there's not a clear indication of what belongs where, what goes where. So the lack of also having a city planner that you see that most jurisdictions have that assists in developing these type of things create problems. So we've seen it, like how Marie said, we've seen it in businesses being where they shouldn't be, you know, not really having areas for conservation, for preservation. So it's time that, you know, in my conversations with DPNR, they have shared that they have something already planned. They have something that they've been working on. We in the legislature have been waiting for them to submit what they have so we could work with. I've moved a legislation recently which has established an territorial park and protected areas to try to ensure that we have some areas protected.
Thank you. What do you perceive as potential adverse impacts of climate change on the territory? What would you do as a senator to ensure that attention is brought to mitigating those impacts? You have 60 seconds. We'll start with Sam.
See it in our shorelines. You know, climate change is not a myth. It's real. And I think here in the Virgin Islands, we can attest to that because we see the effects. Each summer feels even hotter. Our beaches, shorelines are disappearing. So part of what we have to do is do our little part here in Virgin Islands to try to work against it. And part of that, establishing laws. I'm working on some legislations that have to do with plastic bottles, legislations that have to do even with glass bottles, because you know, like Marie said, we're just 84 square feet, so we're a small territory. So we need to do our little part to try to reduce and recycle and reuse. And by that, we also do a little part in contributing to improving our environment and protecting our environment and protecting our resources that are crucial and precious to us. So part of that is how we can really activate and be active, I should say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Maurice, again, you'll have 60 seconds.
Thank you. First, I want to applaud Sam. I was very happy when he passed the territorial park system, because that's actually a way to reduce the impact of climate change when you have more land that's being preserved. So I want to definitely applaud him on that. We need to find a way to reduce waste. The amount of waste that I recently learned that we actually, as a community, produce more waste than people in the United States. So we need to teach our people to reduce waste. We need waste. We also need to try to grow more, you know, have more trees, more gardens, more ways that on this little island we cannot feel as hot as we feel. But really, when it comes to island nations, island countries, we're affected by what those big countries are doing. So the little we can do on the island, we should do, but we're really at the mercy of those big countries and nations, and we need to somehow let them know that they're affecting us also.
Let's talk now about housing. Many young families are leaving the territory because they cannot afford the housing market here or even find affordable rents. Some have suggested reinstituting rent control as a way of stabilizing the rental market. What is your position on rent control for the Virgin Islands? You'll have 60 seconds, and we'll start with Maurice.
I haven't really thought about rent control. I don't think that it's the answer. Offhand, I really don't think that it's going to do what we need to do in terms of providing our people with housing. We actually need, from my point of view, and where my focus is on finding a way to increase middle income housing, and not only through the government. The government is targeted towards low and affordable income families without restrictions where middle income people cannot apply. So we need to find a way with the private sector and the nonprofit sector to create more housing for those people, because it not only creates long-term housing stability, keep them here, but it creates generational wealth. But rent control is an area that I would have to do more research in and see whether or not it will ultimately benefit the tenant, because that's who we want to focus on and make sure that they're able to afford the house that they're in. So that's an area that I would definitely look into.
Thank you. And Sam, again, you have 60 seconds.
We really have a housing crisis here in the territory. When you look at the waiting list for some of our public housing that we have available, it's past the hundreds. You add on to that now short-term rentals, which has been really kicking up in the territory because of tourism, Airbnbs, and so forth, which limits even more our housing stock. I was able to work with my colleagues and pass Act 8465, which creates a first-time home owner buyers program to really try to empower our people and provide some funding for them to be able to tap into and get loans and assist them in the process of becoming homeowners. We really also have to look into some developers to come into the territory and develop housing stock for middle income families, which is so crucial. So I'll continue to work in the 35th, along with my colleagues, to ensure that there is programs and fundings available for our people in our community to be able to tap into the housing market.
Thank you. Candidates have discovered that it is wise to talk about promoting agriculture in order to get elected. But once in office, very little is heard about strengthening agribusiness. What do you see as the challenges to making agribusiness a reality in the Virgin Islands, and how would you address them as a senator? You have 60 seconds. We'll start with Sam.
I think part of the challenges really rests within ourselves. We need to change our mindset of the way how we see agriculture. Agriculture has evolved over the years, so I think the perspective of agriculture really is a wrong perspective. Now there's technology involved in agriculture, so we need to get our young people excited about those opportunities and present to them those options. Agriculture has really evolved so much in technology, so I think part of it, that's what we have to do: educate and break those myths that connect with agriculture. I was able to pass legislation establishing the community seed bank program, which directly involves agriculture, allowing the preservation of seeds, fruits, and plants that are unique to our territory, that sometimes over the years, through hurricane, through climate change, we're not seeing certain plants, certain fruits that were precious and once abundant in our territory. So that's part of what I've been in regards to agriculture. But it also starts within our education system.
Thank you. And Maurice, again, you'll have 60 seconds.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I think that for some reason, we seem to think that farmers are not business people. I have a problem with that. Why do we think that they're not able to run businesses? They do that every single day, just like I do. I provide a service, they provide products. So that's one misconception that we need to remove. Recently, I listened to the presentation to the legislature on the agricultural plan. I just got it. I started to read it because I want to become more familiar with it. I was a little intrigued with the fact that they're looking at vertical farming, because most people will go, we're so limited in land mass that we can't do any more farming. And as Sam said, technology is really changing the way that we farm, the way that we do business, period, whether it's farming or even as an attorney. So we now need to find these ways to produce effectively and efficiently. But first we need to talk to the experts, and those are the farmers themselves. And so that's what I intend to do, and learn as much as I can about running their business and how it runs. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for each candidate to expand on any one topic of choice for 60 seconds before we move to the closing statement. Let's start with Maurice James.
Well, one of the things that I noticed that was running through us as we were speaking is that we know that we don't have the population to sustain a lot of things that we want to do. We have jobs, but we don't have people. So as Sam was speaking and as we were talking, I realized that we have to find a way to bring people back to the territory, increase the population, fill those vacancies, have them come back and start businesses. Let them know that this is a place to be. This is a place to raise your family. You know, I say over and over that my vision for St. Croix is that it should be the best place to raise a child, to live, to learn, to play, to work, to do business, to retire. And so we need people to come back so that we can, in fact, provide for ourselves and for visitors or whoever comes here.
Thank you. And now we'll have Sam again. You have 60 seconds. Any topic of your choice.
Thank you. Just following the same line as Maurice was sharing, I think part of what we also need to focus on is workforce development. Mm-hmm. And so we need to try to find ways to incentivize individuals, which might sound kind of weird, but not only create programs, but incentivize them to get involved. And because we really have a capacity issue. So if we really want to bring people back, we need to ensure that we have the infrastructure in place for them to come back. And so that speaks about housing, that speaks about having a healthcare system, that speaks about having a reasonable energy costs. So all these things contribute to individuals wanting to come and wanting to stay. So we need to tackle all these areas to try to improve the quality of life for everyone in the Virgin Islands. And so as we work on these issues, we'll see individuals will start coming, because then, you know, they'll feel safe. Crime has gone down. There's a good healthcare system, so I want to be a place where I know if I have an emergency, I can be attended, and all these other areas then will fall in place.
Thank you. Now candidates will have 60 seconds each for a closing statement, starting with Sam Carrion.
Well, I want to thank the Women Leagues of Voters for allowing me to be here today and to be able to share with the viewing and listening audience about a little bit about who I am. And I want to thank the members of my community for allowing me the opportunity to serve you on the 34th Legislature of the Virgin Islands. It's been a challenging year with pandemics and everything, but we were able to be successful in working on your behalf, bringing forward legislation that would impact and improve the quality of life for Virgin Islanders. And what I'm asking you is to allow me the opportunity to continue to work on your behalf, to continue to develop pieces of legislation that we already have and others that we want to be able to create to really target areas within our community that need assistance and need help. I'm your independent candidate, Sam Carrion, number 12 on the ballot, and allow me to continue to work on your behalf and represent you on the 35th Legislature of the Virgin Islands. Thank you.
And Maurice James.
Hello, once again, I am Maurice James, and I am a Democrat, and I'm number 16 on your ballot. I want to offer my services to you, the people of St. Croix. I have the ability, the talent, the experience, the knowledge, the know-how, and most of all, the concern for the people of St. Croix. And I have optimism. I believe in better. And I believe that all of us deserve better, whether it's housing, health care, education, any of those areas that we spoke about today. We need to improve, and the way that we can do that is by having better government, because when government works, it matters. It matters when it doesn't work, and it matters when it does work, and we have to make it work. And I want to, as a senator, be one of your voices to help government be more efficient and effective, to provide, to give you back the trust that you should have in government. And I believe that as a senator, I can move legislation that will in fact improve the lives of us in the areas that I've been focusing on, whether it's, thank you, my time is up.
Thank you, candidates, and thank you, WTJX TV and staff, for today's program. Thank you for watching and for understanding my choice for a mask today. The League of Women Voters hopes this program has helped with your understanding of the candidates, and in so doing will inform your vote in November. Thank you for watching. I am Francine Lang for the League of Women Voters of the Virgin Islands, saying vote early or vote in November, but vote.